Good morning. Go ahead and grab your Bible, and you can join me in Proverbs chapter 18 today. And as you turn there, we want to welcome back our Guatemala team. They just got in, I think, late last night. Did they make it in last night? Is anybody here? Okay, I see a couple hands. So I'd imagine they're a little bit tired today. Long journey yesterday, but we're so thankful for just their willingness to go, and also just for the work the Lord that did there while they were there. And from what I understand, I don't know if this is the latest or not, but Pastor Allen told me they did a medical clinic. They also did some light construction, but they were able to, I think, see over 130 patients, something like that, 130 patients in the medical clinic. And then also they had 15 people trust in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Isn't that awesome? Can we just give thanks to that? I mean, let's not treat that as if it's common, okay? For people to go to death to life, there's no greater miracle. And so we celebrate what God did in Guatemala this past week. And thank you, Alan, for leading that team. And we do have the privilege of also commissioning one of our own to go on a mission journey here at the end of our service. So we're going to save time for that as well today. Well, we're starting actually a new series. So if this is your first time here, man, it's a good time for you to be here. We welcome you, and I hope you've enjoyed the experience so far. I hope somebody's made you feel welcome. But we are starting a series entitled Roommates, Great Dates, and Soulmates. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about friendships and dating, and then also marriage. And we want this sermon, we often try to think of ways to do this. We like for the sermon to kind of spill out there, not just stay in here, but to have some kind of impact in your life as you leave. And so we want to give you some homework this week, and we'll give you some homework over the next few weeks for you to do, so when you come back, you've maybe put into practice some of the things we're talking about in here. And so this morning, we outside, and you may have seen this in the foyer already, we have a little table set up there, and we made some cards for you to write a friend. And so this is for our men and our women. Okay, we want you to grab a card, and it's just a simple little card, and we want you to write, think of someone who's been a friend to you over the years, who's made an impact on your life, and maybe that'll become a little clearer as we kind of talk through friendship this morning. And we want you to write them a note and mail it. Put it in the mail or give it to them, but just a way for you to express your gratitude for their friendship, what they've meant to you over the years. And so we'll have those out there this morning and next Sunday morning. You can certainly write your own, but if you need a little help, and some of our men, I know you need help with this, okay? You'd rather me ask you to give an extra $100 bill, right, in the offering plate than to write a note to a friend, some of our men. But we really want you to take, really for many of you, a step of faith and put into practice some of the things we're talking about. There's only one condition. If you grab one of those cards, you have to write it, okay? You are committing before us and before God that you're going to write a letter to a friend. So don't take it unless you are definitely going to use it and put it into practice. Well, this morning we're going to talk about friendship, and I think it's a good place to start. I think friendship is an underestimated relationship in the world that we live in, but I think it's, if you stand back and look at them clearly, I think it may be the most important. Having friends, close friends, is often something that's discovered too late. In fact, there was a nurse named Bonnie Ware, and she had the privilege and very difficult task of working with patients during their last few weeks of life. These were people who knew they were dying. And as she got to know them and was ministering to them, she would also ask them questions, and she would kind of record their late in life epiphanies right before they're about to die. And as she summed these up, she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she noticed that often one of the 5 regrets for people that were close to death was this. They all said that I wish I had stayed close with my friends. I wish I would, in other words, I wish I would have invested more time in staying close with my friends. I think this is part of the way that we're wired. Too often we get so busy in life, we don't step back and realize that. One of the church fathers, Augustine, some 1,600 years ago, said this. He said, in this world, 2 things are essential, life and friendship. and both should be highly prized, and we must not undervalue them. Once again, what is he saying there? He's saying that you and I were created in the image of a triune God, okay? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, who are engaged and have been engaged in this relationship with one another from eternity past and will be to eternity future. And in the same way they exist, we too were created for relationship, not only with them, but with one another. And so this is why when you even go back early in the garden, when God created Adam, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, he said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper corresponding to him." This is the only place we see there in the very beginning, prior to the fall, that God says it's not good. And it's not, he doesn't say it's not good because it's sinful or for some reason something's gone wrong here. He's not saying it because Adam is not perfect. No, it's because he is perfect that he knows that Adam is built with this desire to not be alone. In fact, Tim Keller put it this way. He said, Adam wasn't lonely because he was imperfect, but because he was perfect. The ache for friends or for others is not the result of sin. It's because you and I were made in the image of God. And to deny that you need friends, and some of us are there this morning. We deny that we need any people outside of our own family unit that are close to us, that knows what's going on in our lives. To deny that you need friends, that you are just a loner, then you are straying away from the way you were designed by God. And I made a close friend here, something that, here are some things that don't count as friends, okay? Your Netflix account does not count as a friend. Guys, your Xbox, your PlayStation, I know you love it dearly, okay, but that does not suffice for a friendship. Facebook, Instagram, okay, your Facebook friends, your followers on Instagram, okay, those are not friends. We know those are people just stalking you. That's all they are. That's what you do on Facebook. That's what I do on Facebook, okay? We stalk. We don't build friendships around those platforms. And so when we talk about friendship, we're talking about something deeper. You have a deep need for real friendship, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, wherever you fall on that scale. I can think back in the different eras of my life, and I'm thankful for the way that God has put friends in my life that have shaped me at different seasons. And for the most part, it's been good, but also I think there's some caution, as we'll discover this morning, and those people we surround ourselves with and also call our friends because they impact us in the way that we live. They impact us in the decisions that we make. And so when we think about friends, a good place to start is Scripture, and because God has designed and created friendship. And I think a great place to start is in the book of Proverbs, because the book of Proverbs has much to say to us about friendships. Friends are necessary. But there is some counsel here. There's some wisdom to be considered in making friends. And so we're going to look. Go ahead and, are you Proverbs 18:24? Are you there yet? If you need some help, there's a Bible there in the front of you in the pew, and Proverbs 18:24 is page 571 if you need a little help getting there. But Proverbs 18:24 says this about friends. It says, "One with many friends may be harmed, but there is a friend who stays closer than a brother." It's just one verse, but I think this would be a good one for you to underline. I think this is a good one for us to say together. So let's say this verse together. One with many friends may be harmed, but there is a friend who stays closer than a brother. It's interesting because these words can go against our natural instincts in some ways. You would think, too many friends brings harm. You don't usually hear something like that, but often we would think, well, the more friends in our life, the merrier. But here the Bible seems to be teaching the opposite. And when you think about a proverb, now know this, a proverb is not necessarily a command, okay? The Proverbs are written differently than some of the things we see in the letters and the narratives in Scripture. A proverb is a picture. It gives insight on how life generally works as God designs it. And usually there's a little example. They're not absolute promises. They typically point to how life generally works. And the Bible's counsel here is that a man with many friends may be harmed, but there is a friend who stays closer than a brother. And so in this verse, we have two things. We have a caution and we have a commendation. We have a caution and then we have a commendation. And first we have this caution. He says, and listen, I believe this caution that he gives us regarding friendship, it implies something about the nature of friendships. First of all, there are different levels of friends, right? We know this. I think you can even see it in the verse. In fact, as you go back to verse 24 here, the two words used for friends here, although the CSB doesn't necessarily show that, these are actually two different words in the Hebrew. The ESV displays that well, a couple of other translations, but here in the CSB, this is the same word, but we'll see how those two words are maybe different from one another as we move on this morning. But there are different levels of friendship, but all of our friends, all of our friends have some type of impact on us. They influence us. No matter what level, they make a difference in our lives. And so friends influence the quality and the direction of our lives. I think that's one of the things why we need to be consider carefully who our friends are. I think that's one of the reasons the writer of Proverbs gives this instruction. He says it again in Proverbs 13, verse 20. He says, "The one who walks with the wise will become wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm." It says, "The disaster pursues sinners, but good rewards the righteous." So once again, these verses give us a picture here that those people you surround yourself with, they influence not only the quality of your life, but also the direction, right? How you live and where you're going. Friends change that, don't they? They influence that. The people you walk with in life, that impact the person you're becoming even. And whether we realize it or not, we absorb the attitudes and the values and even the convictions of those around us. In fact, one of the perks of going on a mission trip with Pastor Allen, I've been on a few with him before, is you get to hear him slowly change his language, okay? When he goes to Guatemala, he begins to pick up the accent of the Guatemalans midway in the trip, as if they can understand him better if he speaks with their accent. Perhaps you do that too, but I love that. I got to see it in India. I've seen it in Guatemala. I think he uses the same accent. He's got the same foreign accent for all countries. But if you live there for quite a while, you do the same thing. I mean, and listen, I would too. You're influenced by those people around you, right? And good or bad, wise or foolish, we're always learning. We're always being influenced by our friends. And so that's why another reading in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 24 and 25. Once again, these are all good little sayings for you to consider and to underline. The writer says this: "Don't make friends with an angry man, and don't be a companion of a hot-tempered man, or you will learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare." So what is that saying? He's saying, in a way, those people who are your friends around you, you are entrusting yourself to them. As you spend a great deal of time with them, you're entrusting your well-being to them. Whether you mentally or do that in your own head, that's happening around you. You're absorbing who they are. Even our so-called friends on Facebook, right? They impact us. They change the way we think about things. And it doesn't mean that everybody on your social media platforms needs to think the same way you do. I don't think that's a good strategy for life, okay? I think that's part of the problem with our world that we live in. But I think we do need to step back and consider how our friends, even on the social media platforms, impact us, those that we need to be listening to. It's interesting, that phrase that Bacton used in chapter 18, verse 24, it says, "Many friends may be harmed." Another way to say that is come to ruin. And that literally means to be torn into pieces. And I wonder how many of you feel that way when you scroll through social media. when you go through Instagram. Maybe you feel good when you begin the process, but by the time you get halfway through, you're close to the end, your heart and your soul just feels torn into pieces because of what you've witnessed, because of what you've seen through the window of the lives of those you call friends. Our lives are interconnected with one another. One person's bad decisions impact those who are around them. And so it's important, I think, that the writer here would say, who are you with each day? Who are you spending time with, whether it be through technology or who you're in the presence of? Who are the people that are surrounding you? Because those are the people that you are becoming like. You should consider the people who are around you because those are the very people that you are becoming like. And let me share with you just a few grounds that maybe not be the best avenues for friendship or best grounds or basis for friendship. I would say this: acceptance is not always the best grounds for friendship, for close friendship. And if you're younger, I really want you to hear me on that. That if you choose your friends simply by those who accept you, that's not always a great grounds for close friendship. Now, certainly you want your friends to accept you, but every friend who accepts you may not be the person you need to influence you. Okay? Another ground for friendship that's not always the best is proximity. Proximity is not always the best grounds for close friendship. So simply because you work with someone or you're around someone all the time, it doesn't mean that you need to invest in them as your close friends. Now, once again, you're around them, so there's going to have to be some level of friendship. But just because they're close to you and proximity to you doesn't mean you need to open up your heart and your mind to allow them to have a great influence over you. And then finally, I would say this: common interest is not always the only best ground for close friendship. Now, C.S. Lewis would say that friends are discovered when you're kind of walking around in life and you bump into somebody and you see something the same way. You do have a common interest. And I do think friends must have that common interest. Okay, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But simply having a common interest in something, okay, is not always the best grounds for a deep friendship. All of us can probably think of a time when we went against a conviction in our lives because of a friend or because of a group of friends, right? I mean, listen, if you can't think of it lately, go back to your teenage years. I'm certain there's a moment in your life when you went against a conviction that you had because of the people you were around. That's the impact of our friends. And so the psalmist would say this. He would give us this caution. Listen, your friends influence you, so don't enter into friendship too casually. Don't allow just anybody to have access to your heart and to your mind. Because if you give them access to your heart and your mind, you give them access to your present well-being, and you give them access to your future. Because who they are, as you walk with them, you're going to be headed in the same direction. And so that's the caution that we see here in Proverbs 17 or 18:24. Don't enter into friendship too casually. Consider who you're investing in. Consider who you're surrounding yourself with. And see the impact they're having on your life. And if you can't see it, know that it's there. They are influencing you. So there's the caution. But then we have this commendation. We have this commendation in the second half of the verse 24. He says, the caution is one with many friends may be harmed, but the commendation is this: there is a friend who stays closer than a brother. There is a friend that stays closer than a brother, right? There is a kind of faithful friend you need. And that word friend there, notice, it's not speaking of friends, it's speaking of a friend. And I don't know that it necessarily means that you can only have one person like this, but it's saying there certainly will be fewer. And that word, Hebrew word translating friend, you could also translate love or beloved. It's a more, it's a deeper sense of what a relationship should look like. And we'll see that as you go on, even in the way that it's described. But we need these kind of friends. And listen, you need this kind of friend. We need to hear this. Most people in our culture don't pursue this kind of friendship that he is commending here. Some people don't know how. Some people just get lost in everyday life and don't consider that important. A recent survey asked the question over the past 6 months, how many people have you discussed deeply an important matter with? And over half of the people said they couldn't really come up with anybody outside of their own family. And so this is the missing component to many of our lives. In fact, as you read through a lot of the studies today, you know one of the biggest issues in our society is? People might point to poverty or pandemics or politics. But one of the biggest problems in our society today is loneliness. One of the things that's undergirding all these issues is this sense of loneliness. That's loneliness. That was Ben Sassy's, the former senator, the U.S. senator. He's now about to be the president of the University of Florida. That was his findings in his book, Them. Loneliness is the biggest problem facing our nation today. There's even been studies, the Surgeon General at one time said this, the past Surgeon General said this, that being lonely or suffering from loneliness is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It has the same impact on your health. Now, if you wouldn't consider smoking 15 cigarettes a day because you know that's not good for you, then step back and consider the reality, okay? The scientific findings of the impact of loneliness. We need friends. We need friends who we form deep friendships with. And Scripture tells us there is this kind of faithful friend. You need this kind of faithful friend. That's why, and here's a couple of attributes of this friend we see here in verse 24. First of all, this kind of friend is a friend who stays close. Who is this kind of friend that you need in your life? It's a friend who is close. You know, I find women are better at men than having close friends. Women can sit face to face and have a conversation. Men, let's face it, we're scared. We need to be doing something. Women can call one another up and have our conversation where there's laughter, joy, and tears. Men, if we're on the phone longer than 5 minutes, we're in tears, right? But for a whole different reason. We like to get on the phone and get off, and we're very purpose-minded as far as getting things done. But men, even we need to have side-by-side conversations with other men while we're doing things, but also we need to learn how to have face-to-face conversations as well. We need other men who know what's going on in our lives that we would consider close. And we see this modeled for us in the Old Testament and the New Testament. One good example in the Old Testament that we see over and over again, people point back to, is the relationship between David and Jonathan. And these two men were in the military together. They were military men. They were warriors together. These were not soft guys. These were manly men. And notice what it says about them in 1 Samuel 18:1. It says, Jonathan was bound to David in close friendship and loved him as much as he loved himself. And this friendship is unique in other ways as well. I mean, they really should never have been friends. If anything, Saul was the king of Israel at this time. Jonathan was his son, so Jonathan would have been next up to be king. Here's David, and God has anointed David to be the next king. And Saul knows it, and Jonathan knows it. And yet, instead of looking at David as his enemy, Jonathan looked at David as his friend. And what unites two people that would naturally in this world be enemies? What unites them? Well, it's the purposes of God. It's the purposes of God. Jonathan saw upon David's life the anointing to be the next king. He saw God's purposes in his life, and so they built this friendship, not based on where each of one of them to go with their own lives. No, they built this friendship based around the purposes of God for their lives. And we see that they loved one another. They shared their lives together. They trusted one another. My friends, we too are called as Christians. We're called to unite our lives together around God's purposes. That's a great foundation for a friendship. As two people are living for God's purposes in their life, they create a common ground there for them to share their lives together, for them to trust one another with their lives. We can live in close friendship like that. I mean, even think about this. Think about Jesus in the New Testament. The Hebrew culture, family in the Hebrew culture was extremely important. I mean, you were interconnected in ways more so than we even are here in Jackson, Tennessee. It was everything. Your community, your family was your community, your family was your support system. Often it would be the means to your livelihood. In much part, your family really was your future. And yet, who is with Jesus the final moments before the cross, before his death? Who are the people that were surrounding him? It was his disciples. It was his disciples. And remember what he called them in John chapter 15. In fact, let's read these verses together. Jesus said this to his disciples. Once again, this is the night before the night of his arrest and the day before his crucifixion. He says, "You are my friends if you do what I command you." He says, "I do not call you servants anymore because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father." That's a powerful moment in the life of Jesus' disciples. So he's gathering them. There's just an intensity as they're in that upper room. And Jesus looks at them and he says, "From now on, you are my friends." He basically uses the word friends here 3 times in these two sentences. He has brought them in close. He has shared his heart. Jesus has even shared his struggles with him. And he is about to share his pain with them, even to the point where Jesus is going to take them to the Garden of Gethsemane. And then he's going to ask 3 of them to go on further with him. Even though he knew their flesh would fail and in ways they would disappoint him, still, Jesus is showing us the significance of friendship. And ultimately, that's what Jesus has done on the cross, right? He has created a community of friends, more than that, but at least friends. And so we see the significance of Jesus' friends and this friendship that he has with them. It was forged on knowing the Father's will. You see, Christian friendship, once again, it's the thing that 2 people, that C.S. Lewis would say, that 2 people discover that brings them together and gives their friendship focus. This is the Father's will. And for the Christian, right, Jesus is at the center of our lives. And so Jesus is the center of our friendships. And so one thing when you consider about that person that needs to be that close friend, okay, if you're a Christian, I would say that you need to find someone who knows and is pursuing Jesus. Okay, when you think about having that friendship, you need to think about someone who's following Jesus, that Jesus is at the center of their life. And the picture here is that 2 people are striving to be more like Jesus. As they're pushing on and pursuing Jesus, not only growing closer to Jesus, but they're also growing closer to one another. And so that close friend, it doesn't need to be just anybody. It needs to be someone who his life is headed in the same direction as yours. Christ's likeness is their goal. That is good grounds for a deep friendship. Someone who's pursuing Jesus, and then someone who knows what you are doing in your walk with Jesus. Someone who can celebrate your joys and even more knows and shares your struggles. One of my favorite quotes that I read about friendship this past week was by J.C. Riles, and this is what he said. He said, "This world is full of sorrow and it's full of sin. This world is a dark place. It's a lonely place. It's a disappointing place. And the brightest sunbeam in it is a friend." And he said, "Friendship halves our troubles and doubles our joys." Friendship halves our troubles. It helps us walk through and deal with our troubles, to have that close friend that knows what's going on in your life, that's walking through it with you, and it doubles your joys. It makes those things that you celebrate, that joy becomes complete, doesn't it, when you share it with someone else. And so this friend that he's mentioning that sticks closer than a brother, first of all, that person needs to be close. Then second thing, and lastly, I would say this friend needs to be someone who is constant. Someone who stays, someone who sticks. You know, that word stays closer. It's only one word in Hebrew, but it's also the same word used in, I think it's Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, when it says that a man and a woman will come together, speaking of Adam and Eve, and they will bond together. That same word. It's really like 2 people being glued together. That's what this friendship should look like. That you need a friend who is constant. You know, the world will say that friendship is the least necessary of all relationships. And you may not agree with that, but practically, I think often we live like that. That friendship is kind of the least of all the important relationships. We know family is important, right? You can't choose your family. You've got your family, and so a family relationship you cannot get out of. We also place high value on romantic relationships, don't we? Those are relationships we choose, right? And then eventually if you get married, once again, those things are to last. They're not easy to get out of, but we place high value on romantic relationships. We have to interact with other people at work, and so we don't really have a choice whether to be involved in our work relationships, even our neighbors, right? You have to have some kind of relationship with your neighbor. All these relationships come either naturally or insert themselves into our lives. They push on you. They're not usually easily getting out of. But having a friendship is different because it's a choice. You don't choose your family, right? Marriage is a choice, but it is for life. It's meant to last until death. But once again, friendship is unique. It requires an ongoing choice because friendship can be easily gotten out of. And so I would suggest to you this morning. Listen, it's great. Your husband and your wife, if you're married, needs to be one of your best friends, but it's not the only best friend you need. It's not the only close friend you need. Because one of the greatest expressions of friendship is someone who's constant, someone who's there, someone who has the choice to leave, but they choose to stay. That's friendship. That's what we see played out here. It requires an ongoing choice. When life gets busy or hectic, friendship is typically the relationship that gets squeezed out, isn't it? At that time when that person doesn't become useful to you or life just gets too busy, that's the one there's left with no margin. But once again, look what the Proverbs say in Proverbs 17:17. It says, a friend loves what? At all times. A friend is available at all times. And a brother is born for a difficult time. This verse, even in Proverbs 18:24, that says that there is a friend who stays closer than a brother. Let me give you a picture that this is probably depicting that might have come to mind in the book of Proverbs even at this time. You can picture it like this. There's a poor man who owes a debt that he cannot pay. And he finds himself in front of the court. He owes a wealthy creditor. He pleads for mercy, but he is ignored. And even if this poor man's case is just the rich man has abused the legal system and is trying to take advantage of him, which it could have been, the poor man is still at a loss. He doesn't have the resources to fight back. And so he's standing in the court against this wealthy creditor, and his friends abandon him. Okay? His friends can abandon him. And in this context, especially it may refer to the friends who are unwilling to stand up for him at the gate. The gate was a place where a lot of things were settled in a city. And so if you were someone who was going to stay by a poor man against a wealthy man, guess what would happen to you? Yeah, you would be a victim as well. You would become oppressed as well. And he's saying this, a true friend, when your friend is there at the gate and he's standing before the court and he knows he's in debt or is being taken advantage of by his wealthy creditors, by other people, a true friend remains, even at his own expense, and experiences the pain with him. And my friends, isn't this, when we think about the greatest friend of all, isn't that what he has done? When we were standing against our creditor, when we owed a debt that we could not pay, Jesus, at his own expense, came and he stood by us. He not only stood by us, but he paid the debt with his own life. He is the picture of friendship. He's the friend this morning more than any other friend that you need. And this morning, if you find yourself in a lonely place, and listen, maybe you don't even know you're lonely because you're so busy. But when you slow down just enough to listen to your heart and your soul, you know there's something missing. And I know that's the case for many people in the room this morning. Can I just say to you this morning, there's no better friend you can have than Jesus. He's already done something unfathomable for you. He's taken your place. He paid your debt. He's already shown you the greatest love that's possible. This is what he says in John chapter 15, verse 12. He says, "This is my command," as he's speaking to his disciples. Once again, this is the night before the crucifixion. He says, "Love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends." And so the greatest expression of love is found in what kind of relationship? It's found in a friendship. It's found in a friendship, because a friend can choose to leave. So it takes great love and great sacrifice to stay. And that's what Jesus did for you and for me. When we were stuck there, facing death for our sin, he stayed, he took our place. And now he invites you to become his friend, to lay off your sin and trust him and his sacrifice and give your life to him and become his friend. And so if you've not done that, let that be the first place that you start in friendship. And if you have that friendship this morning already, would you consider being this kind of friend to someone else? Because we can all sit back and say, well, man, that friendship sounds good. The one who's close and that stays. You know, how do you get that kind of friend? And I would say, listen, we're going to talk more about that next week. But the first thing you need to consider is how to become one. How to be that kind of friend to someone else. Let's pray together.